It's been 4 years since the Nintendo Switch and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild released in North America, and from the moment Link awoke in the Shrine of Resurrection, I was completely pulled into the world. However, that was 4 years ago. How does the game hold up now, and does it support several replays without becoming tedious? I'll save you some time because it most certainly does, but it's how Breath of the Wild manages to stay fresh and thrilling that is so important to discuss. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is about the downfall of the Hyrule Kingdom after a war 100 years before where a great hero and his sword disappeared. All the other heroes of the era were killed, so the only chance the kingdom has to be saved is for the hero to resurface and defend the kingdom once again. When Link wakes up in the Shrine of Resurrection, the only knowledge he has retained is how to get dressed and climb some cliffs. Only the bare essentials are left in the mind of our hero, as he is tasked with finding a way off the plateau that Zelda left him stranded on 100 years ago to ready himself to fight Calamity Ganon. The plateau is one of the best designed intro levels in gaming history, with a variety of basic enemies to fight, varied ecosystem, and a large part of the game's sandbox to play in. Link is told by a kind old man that he must collect runes from each of the shrines that have sprung up along the plateau, and that he will reward Link with a paraglider to escape the plateau. Each of these shrines are mini puzzle rooms that the player must use different game mechanics to solve. They might require gliding, item manipulation, or even using the Nintendo Switch's gyro function to move a ball through a maze. Spirit orbs. Every 4 spirit orbs allows Link to upgrade his health and stamina bars, so it is critical to collect as many as you can. The Plateau tutorial organically encourages the player to learn the different mechanics to survive in the world, like when the final shrine is located in a colder region of the plateau, Link must learn to survive. There are 2 ways a player might learn to easily traverse the snowy climate. They might find the old man's cottage and read a journal entry about using food to stay warm, or they might brave the weather only to admit defeat around a bokoblin encampment. But it's in the throes of defeat that the player might realize that the fire is keeping them warm. Using a branch, torch, or other wooden object, the player can bring the protection the fire offers them with them on the rest of the hike up the mountain. Finally, I was able to activate all the shrines and let the old man, who's really the king of Hyrule, talk my ear off about the history of his defeat. After the history lesson, the king offered me a paraglider, and I was free to liberate Hyrule's countryside. The paraglider allows the player to fall with style and safely ignore the heights of the Great Plateau. The only restriction the player has to contend with is the stamina bar, but even if a player jumps from a great height and uses the glider at the very last moment, all of their momentum will be cancelled out. Effectively, falling to your death in Breath of the Wild isn't something you normally have to worry too much about. Now with the paraglider, the world of Hyrule has completely opened up, and as much as I enjoy the core gameplay loop of running around and exploring new areas, Link does have a mission to accomplish. Link is tasked with liberating 4 divine beasts to help him bring down Calamity Ganon. The game doesn't force you to use the divine beasts, but doing so makes the final fight with Ganon a lot easier. Each divine beast is located in a distinct region of the world and is looked after by a different race of beings. For instance, the divine beast Varuta, a giant elephant, is located in Zora's domain and spouts water from its giant trunk, which rains down on the region like a perpetual rainstorm. Or the divine beast Ba Naboris, a giant camel stomping around the desert causing a giant sandstorm. They have tremendous power, and until they are liberated will cause havoc for the regions they are located in. However, before Link can save the ancient beasts, he must first gain the trust of the people in those regions. Each region contains their own quest line to gain access to the divine beast, and for the most part, each region's quests are very enjoyable. I'll admit that I really dislike the Gerudo Deserts quest where you must sneak into the Yiga clan's hideout to steal back a priceless artifact. The sneaking through the hideout can feel tedious, and sometimes I feel cheated out of my victory by an overly suspicious guard. It make me wish that there are more challenging dungeons in the base game, because the shrine puzzles can feel a little too easy most of the time. After you complete all the puzzles in a divine beast, you're able to fight a piece of Ganon that is infecting the beast. Each mini Ganon is themed based on the hero they defeated in battle. They are tough and require that you use everything at your disposal to defeat them. In some instances, it is prudent to prepare beforehand so that you don't have to work harder during the fight, like bringing enough arrows to shoot Water Blight Ganon while he floats in the water unconscious. Speaking of Water Blight Ganon, I only just realized that version of Ganon is the only one that manipulates the entire battlefield. The second stage of the fight becomes flooded with water, and 4 platforms appear for the player to fight in. I think it would have been a lot cooler if all the other Ganons did something just as transformative instead of just having powered up elemental attacks they normally use. The water is one of the most challenging defenses the Ganons can use because you can't fight in the water. Your ability to fight becomes restricted by the lack of space, and that makes it that much more exhilarating. Imagine if Thunderblight Ganon had fought on a stage with moving platforms, walls, and other sections that Link had to stand on and avoid in order to fight back, maybe even using the Divine Beast controls to move the platforms to secure a better angle. There is so much potential for these boss battles to be some of the most interesting in Zelda's history, but they just missed the opportunity to do so. Breath of the Wild's biggest accomplishment is that it throws you into an expansive world and says, now go. You start walking, and when you come across a mountain on the horizon, chances are you can go up there. Everything you see in the game, you can run to, climb up, and explore. There are few restrictions beyond Link's stamina bar to prevent you from going anywhere you want in the world. Of course, there are boundaries to the world, but the game's map is so big that it is easy to ignore that fact. The developers also use the natural geography of the region to help hide these boundaries even better. Like the Zora region is next to the ocean. You can't swim all the way out there, so naturally, you will turn your search somewhere else. The world does everything it can to prevent you from thinking that it's just a video game with development restrictions. Besides the shrines and the divine beasts that I have discussed already, there are hidden details that you might never find in your first playthrough. When climbing over a mountain, I found myself looking out onto a plain of horses who were being hunted down by bokoblins riding their own horses. Or the time I was creeping through a moblin camp while they were celebrating something at their campsite, the moblins throwing their giant snouts in the air and bellowing wildly while I sat behind a rock and watched. Breath of the Wild is full of moments of quiet where you can notice not only the beauty of the game's art direction and sound, but you have the chance to enjoy the innocence of the AI and the world at large. Rarely will you ever get me to admit that a game that I spent money on has too much of something, but Breath of the Wild manages to do just that. The game fills its expansive world with more than just amber sunsets and curious enemy AI. It also includes Koroks. Koroks are forest spirits that have decided to play hide-and-seek with Link. They can be found by moving rocks, manipulating blocks to fit a pattern, diving into water, shooting balloons, and much more. It makes exploring much more interesting because you can find these hidden spirits who reward your curiosity with Korok Seeds. The seeds can then be used to upgrade your inventory slots, with each upgrading requiring a few more seeds each time. Now, this is a genius and low-stakes way of making people explore the giant world that they might miss otherwise if they only played the main story. The problem lies with how many of these spirits there are in the game. I would be okay with 100, 200, and maybe even 300. But Nintendo decided that the best course of action was to include over 900 Korok Seeds in the game. This is a little ridiculous. Not only is that a grueling amount of collectibles, but the seeds are required for 100% completion. Breath of the Wild doesn't give the player any way to track their progress, and has no in-game option to track the seeds down besides a DLC armor piece. The armor only makes a sound if you're close to a seed, so it is extremely limited in its benefits to finding all 900 seeds. Breath of the Wild is one of the best games to come out in the last decade, with its unmatched level of exploration, incredible art direction, and sheer amount of content. Everyone should do themselves a favor and try it at some point in their lives. I can only hope that the sequel to Breath of the Wild is just as expansive and innovative in its gameplay, but I guess we will just have to wait and see what's over the horizon.